So today's talk is by Dr. Anne Edwards over there, who works for the John Innes Centre and also helped to do some work for the Norfolk Wildlife Trust at Ashwellthorpe Woods. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, South Yare. Tonight we're going, as your chair said, to Ashwellthorpe Lower Wood, and if you don't know where that is, you've never been, it's just outside the town of Wymondham, about 3 miles south of Wymondham. And this is a map that I took from Google Earth, showing the woodland here. It's 37 hectares in size, or if you prefer the old money, it's just a little bit less than Winnie the Pooh's 100-acre wood. And it's a very ancient woodland. Takes its name, the Ashwellthorpe, from the Vikings, for whom ash was a sacred tree. It was very important in Norse mythology. And these goddesses, the 3 Norns, protected the sacred giant ash, Yggdrasil, by pouring holy water and mud over its boughs and its roots. And you'll see later on that we could do with a few Norns right now, I think. Seen from above, you see it's surrounded by farmland, but the wood itself, it was never dug up for agriculture because it's a very wet woodland. It's on great South Norfolk clay. It's very poorly draining. It's never suitable for agriculture. You'll also notice that there's another little wood off to the side here, to the left, and that's called Upper Wood. So we've got Lower Wood and Upper Wood. And if you go back to the very first published maps of Norfolk, that's way back in 1797, the woods, the Lower and Upper Ashwellthorpe Wood, they were joined. They were just one wood. Fast forward to the next map in 1826, and you can see that the woods were already split into upper and lower. Why? Why did that happen? We don't really know, but we think it might have been something to do with the Napoleonic Wars, because there was this fear that Napoleon would land on the beaches of Yarmouth and invade Britain, and it would take the message had to go through had to be taken to London, to the Admiralty, that we were being invaded, and it would take 3 to 4 days. Someone on horseback, no internet in those days, 3 to 4 days to let London know that Napoleon had landed. So they developed this very fancy signalling system using shutters. However, the shutter system worked best when it could be mounted on top of a hill, the shutter. Norfolk being a little bit flat, they had to make do with the highest point, and unfortunately the trees in Ashwellthorpe stood in the way of the 2 high points either side. So it was cleaved to allow for this signalling system, a system which apparently would take 15 minutes to get the message to London to say that Napoleon had landed. He never did land in Yarmouth, so the shutter system wasn't ever needed, but the woods remained split open. So we know the wood is also mentioned in the Domesday Book, commissioned in 1086 by William the Conqueror, to know which lands that he'd won. And we know from this time, but probably a long time before that, that the wood was managed by coppicing. It's described in the Domesday Book as a coppiced woodland. And what is coppicing? Yeah, coppicing is an ancient form of woodland management whereby areas of trees or coops are cut down to ground level and in rotation, in rotation around the wood. And why was this done? Originally, it was to provide a continuous source of materials for building or fuels. And I think it was Stone Age man that found out that if you cut down a tree, it regrew as these multiple trunks, and it actually provided more timber. And coppicing has quite a few benefits to the trees themselves. It rejuvenates them, and they actually live longer if they're coppiced. This is a coppiced ash, and just to use the example that if you left an ash tree to grow as a single trunk, it might live to about 700 years before succumbing. But a coppiced ash like this can go on for thousands of years, and this one is probably about between 800 and 1,000 years old. Okay. Now, at the end of a coppicing season, got to say that the coppicing season runs from October through to middle to the end of March. Kind of maybe 10 years ago I would have said April, but springs are starting with climate change. The spring's getting earlier and earlier, so we tend to stop coppicing about mid-March now. And it can look a bit bleak. It looks a bit empty at when we finish, but it does start greening up again, because coppicing allows sunlight into the woodland floor, and that allows plants to grow. And some of the ancient plants are now completely dependent on the coppice management. They die out if we stop coppicing. We have some quite rare woodland flora in Ashwellthorpe. This plant here it's actually wild garlic. It's quite common, but this was a BBC film crew that came to film for Alan Titchmarsh's Nature of Britain, it was called, back in I think it was 2007, something like that. And they wanted to show the woodland floor starting to green up after coppicing. So that was I think we got about 15 seconds of fame on the BBC for that. And yeah, the trees grow back really quickly. This is probably a year, 2 years after the trees have been coppiced, because they have this enormous root system. So the top growth comes back really quickly, and this type of growth here is ideal for ground nesting birds like nightingale, woodcock, and of course in its day, the Ashwellthorpe was really important for the rural economy. Nearby Wymondham relied very heavily, medieval Wymondham relied very heavily on wood for carving, long history of brush making, and a lot of the products came from Ashwellthorpe. And there's a great museum in Wymondham which tells you about the brush making story. And they've got the most fabulous diary it's a farming diary written in 1796 by a Wymondham farmer by the name of Randall Burrows. It is the most boring diary you'll ever read in your entire life. But he does describe many occasions going to Ashwellthorpe to buy these what he calls nuttery faggots, as like bundles of hazel coppice, basically, that he used for under draining. I think quite sure what that was. Not quite sure, something to do with ditches. But in 1796, Mr. Burrows paid 2 shillings and 6pence for a score of these bundles of hazel. And it's quite difficult. I think a score, I think, is 20, isn't it? But it's quite difficult to imagine that the worth of 2 shillings and 6pence, particularly back in 1796. So this is where the old internet can come in useful, because in 1796, for 2 shillings and 6pence, you could also buy a whole pig. You could have a tooth taken out of the dentist, or you could have dinner in the local tavern for the whole family, including bread and ale. So now we can maybe understand what these bundles were worth, because the Farmer's Weekly, a Gloucester Old Spot, will set you back a couple of £100. Has anyone had a tooth out recently? Don't know, depends if you private or on the NHS, you know. And dinner in the, I don't know, for the whole family. Yeah, I think they were quite valuable, you know. So the wood really was an important part of the economy. And in the 70s, it was actually owned by the co-op. Oh, so it was owned by the co-op brush factory. They brought it in 1920, and as I say, that the coppiced wood was used to make broom handles, but you know, sort of the wooden broom started going out of favour. We all started using hoovers, and coppicing was no longer economic. Really wasn't worth the trouble. So the co-op sold the factory. It wasn't making enough money. So the co-op sold the woodland. It wasn't making enough money. It went into private ownership, and in a bid to still make money out of the wood, unfortunately, the new owners planted poplar, Italian poplar, and for the matchstick industry, or perhaps also for making these fruit boxes, and horror of horrors, they also introduced sycamore, and we think for the cardboard industry. Now before that, the trees that were there, they were native broadleaf. They had been there since the last ice age, you know, so or just the native broad. So when these foreign trees were introduced, they grew very rapidly. The coppicing blocks became very, very neglected, and of course the ground flora suffered. The wood was very dark. However, the value to wildlife had long been recognised. The wood was designated a SSSI, a Site of Special Scientific Interest, on a number of grounds. And fortunately, in 1992, the Norfolk Wildlife Trust was able to purchase the wood and looked for a group of volunteers really to help eradicate the sycamore and the Italian poplars, and to restore the coppice blocks back to their former glory. So that's where Wing stepped in, the Wyndham Nature Group, the local members group of the Norfolk Wildlife Trust. We started in 1992, and we've been coppicing ever since. And this is an outline of the lower wood. I forgot to say that the upper wood is still in private ownership. And really, the wood is kind of divided into three areas, if you like. Around the outside of the wood is what's called the minimum intervention. We don't coppice there. If a tree falls down, it's just left to rot. So that increases the biodiversity of the wood, because you get lots of fungi, beetles, what have you, in that area. Then we have these paths that crisscross the wood, the rides, and they're just kept open. They're mowed like a meadow, just to keep them open and sunny. And then we have the coppice blocks. A third of the wood is under coppice rotation. There are about 12 blocks. We try to coppice about a hectare every year. It's always difficult to think about what hectare is. I think usually people say it's the size of a football pitch, I think, right? I'm not entirely sure what size a football pitch is, but it's quite a big area. Anyway, we try and do that every year between October and March. So we're going to have a little trip into the wood now. We're starting from our little car park off the street in Ashwellthorpe. It's opened in 2012, the car park. And from there, the wood is open to the public every day. And from the car park, there's a footpath into the wood. And whenever you go to the wood, you'll see something different. There's lots all through the year. See the seasons. It's really nice to watch the changing seasons. And on this cold, wet February night, what better time to start than the glorious spring? Because Ashwellthorpe is an old bluebell wood. Lots of bluebells there. But one of the earliest plants to pop up in the spring is the wood anemone. lovely plant. The flowers always turn to face the sun. They warm themselves up, and that attracts pollinating insects. The seed of the wood anemone, it's not very fertile, so they tend to spread by their runners, underground runners, and they're quite slow growing. So when you get a really big patch of wood anemones, you know that it's very, very old. But old. Primroses, a couple of these out already. Prima rosa, the first rose, glorious wild primroses, and they are pollinated by night-flying insects like moths. And they're almost luminous. If you see them in the dark, they're almost glowing in the dark. Another springtime flower is the arum lily. All sorts of other names: parsons in the pulpit, lords and ladies. Really unusual plant, actually. Its flowers are deep down in here, and this structure here, the spadix, heats itself up when the plant's ready to pollinate. It heats itself up and emits these chemicals that smell like rotting meat, and that's to attract flies, and the flies fall down and pollinate the plant. Or take pollen from one plant, take it to another, down in the spadix. And the arum lily it uses quite a lot of energy to heat up like that, and so it makes a specialised type of starch in its storage organs. And the local deer population love that starch, and so you often see them nipped off where they've eaten the arum lily. Another lovely springtime plant, flower, the cheerful celandine, lesser celandine. And then also spring is a good time to see fungi. This one is a very unusual thing called the anemone cup. It's always associated with the wood anemones. Here's a lovely tasty fungus, the morel. I was very lucky to see that, because the next day the deer had munched that off as well. They love a bit of mushroom. One of my favourite mushrooms, fungi, is the scarlet elf cup. They're out now. It's glorious red cups in the spring, and sometimes they get to be quite big, like the scarlet elf mugs. Orchids, the early purple orchids pop up, April, May maybe. Early purple orchids don't always read the instruction manual. Some of them are white, they pop as well. And I already mentioned the bluebells. It's great to wander amongst the bluebells. And we do organise sort of walks from time to time, guided walks through the bluebells. And they also provide early pollen for butterflies, bees. In the same areas, the bluebells, there's wild garlic, the garlic and the bluebell, they quite like the same conditions, maybe a little bit dark, wet, but they very rarely do you see them growing side by side. It's either garlic or bluebells. It's like maybe the bluebells don't like the smell of the garlic, I don't know, but. And this is a piece of ash, rotting ash here, and this is a lovely fungus called King Alfred's cakes, yeah, I can see they do look burnt. They only grow on dead ash. They don't kill the ash. They just grow on ash that's already dying. And amongst the garlic as well, in the spring, the ramsons, the wild garlic, also has its own hoverfly, which is imaginatively called the Ramson's hoverfly. It's only found amongst the garlic there, and the garlic also provides nectar. That's a green vein white butterfly there. Dog violets pop up, and dog was a sort of old name for plants that didn't have any aroma. This has a long kind of nectary at the back, produces a delicious nectar for long-tongued bees. Another springtime flower that pops up in the coppice blocks is this bugle. All of these ancient plants, they all have a lot of herbal, they're all used in old herbals, all got medicinal properties. This one's also, the bugle's also known as the carpenter's herb, so it's supposed to be good if you cut your finger or something. It's good to know when you're wielding a chainsaw that this could be on hand. But it's also, I think one of my favourite herbalists was a lady called Mrs. Grieve, and she wrote in the 1930s. She sounded like a real upstanding member of the community, but she said, she described the bugle as being a very good antidote for excessive drinking, and it was also the best narcotic in the world, she said. But well, she didn't go into any details, so she didn't elaborate on how you used it. There you go. Dog's mercury, that's dog again, very, very ancient plant. Carries this is the female dog's mercury, and over here the male dog's mercury, this is it in full flower. And the male dog's mercury likes to be out in the full sun. The female is a bit shyer, she likes to be away in the shade. Not quite sure how they ever get together, but there you go. Then another real old plant of ancient woodlands, the yellow archangel. And Culpeper was very keen on the yellow archangel. He called it an exhilarating herb that made the heart merry, maketh the heart merry. And it is actually known to be packed full of natural antidepressants. There we are, perhaps he had something. The yellow archangel. There's a few other little plants that rely on that sunlight coming in early in the year. They get their flowering over and done with before the trees get their leaves, and they're shaded out. This is the town hall clock, so called because the four flowers face in 4 different directions, like a town hall clock. And this one here, does anyone recognise this? The sanicle, and the name it conjures up. It was used in all sorts of herbal remedies. It wasn't very much that a little bit of sanicle couldn't treat at some point. We have seen the early purple orchids. Here's another one of our orchids, the tway blade. Tway from the Middle English for two, because it's these paired leaves, huge big leaves, huge leaves to maximise absorbing sunlight again before the trees get their leaves, and they're blocked out. And this is the tway blade in full flower. Not too much to write home about, but there it is, nice orchid flower. One of my favourite plants, which is completely dependent on coppicing, is the herb Paris. It's a real curious plant. It's got no close relatives in the UK. Very, very ancient plant. Paris, nothing to do with France, but because everything is paired, the leaves, the sepals, here the stamens, and the seed inside the berry, the black berry, 4 seeds. Yeah, real ancient plant. Again, all sorts of medicinal properties, but is quite poisonous. Well, poisonous particularly to children and poultry. I don't know whoever found that out, but it doesn't always read the books either, because occasionally you get ones with 3 leaves. You also get some with 5, and we've even found one with 6. And what pollinates it is not really clear. Maybe some little fly. What transports the seeds, distributes the seeds, again not really clear. And the seeds, well, they never really seem to travel that far from the parent plant. And again, like the wood anemone, it tends to grow by its underground runners. So if you get a big patch of herb Paris. You know, it's hundreds and hundreds of years old. And last year, after coppicing, this patch, and I don't know whether you can see, and this was just part of it, there's this massive patch of herb Paris, hundreds of years old, and it will grow, the herb Paris will grow and flower while it still be able to get sunlight in a coppice block. And when the coppice block grows up, the herb Paris disappears until that block gets coppiced again, and so we're on a 12-year cycle. We never finish. By the time we've finished the 12 blocks, it's time to start again. So some of the herb Paris has 8-10-year rest. Well, it can't get enough sunlight to grow. We come round again, clear the trees, and up it pops. So another few other nice little plants, because it's a very wet wood. We get water ravens, which has this beautiful drooping flower, characteristic of wet ground. And the rides, at some point in the wood's history, some of the rides were made up so they could get transport in and out. So the rides tend to be a bit drier, which is quite good for anyone walking around the wood. But it does mean that it adds to the biodiversity, because as well as water ravens, we get the wood avens, which likes drier ground. And normally you wouldn't see the two side by side because they like such different conditions, but occasionally they do get together and you get this hybrid mixture one, which doesn't really have a name. It's just called the intermediate. It is the intermediate avens. Also liking the wet woodland is the cuckoo flower, or lady's smock. Beautiful little flower that plays host to the orange-tipped butterfly. It lays its eggs. You can see the little orange eggs there. There's the orange tip with that beautiful, the orange tip female here with this beautiful mottled underwing, and here's a close-up of the egg. And only the male has got those orange tips, and there it is, nectaring on the best narcotic in the world, the bugle. The lady's smock has all sorts of followers. The bee fly here, I mean, it has this quite horrific proboscis, but that's not a sting. It's only so that it can get it into these flowers. It's quite harmless little creature. And the rides in the wood are very sunny, generally, because they're cleared, so they attract all sorts of beautiful butterflies. This is one of the earliest butterflies, the brimstone, nectaring there on a thistle. And the brimstone, this is a male, that lovely yellow colour, the inspiration for the name butterfly. A few other butterflies, a nice peacock there, basking on a coppice stool. All sorts of springtime birds. We heard about the dawn chorus walk that you're having. Ashwellthorpe is fabulous for a dawn chorus walk. I just put a couple of birds up here, the chiff-chaff, and here a blue tit nesting in a bat box. Yeah. All sorts of other birds. A tree creeper. It's quite good to see them now when the trees are quite bare. You can see them. Woodpeckers, loads of those. Great spotted and also green we have on our bird list, although they haven't been seen for quite some time, lesser. We haven't seen one of those for some years now. And when I first started coppicing, came to Norfolk, it'd be very unlikely to see a buzzard. I'm originally from Wales, where buzzards are 2 a penny, but didn't see them when I moved over here. But now it's really nice to see them coming back. Regularly we see buzzards. There were 3 of them on Sunday. And also come back is the red kite, and we often see red kite over the wood. This photo was taken in March. I can't remember which year. So snow on the ground. The hares are start to appear now for their boxing over the rise. We have quite a few hares, and we have a lot of deer in the wood as well. We have our native red deer. We have lots of roe deer, and we have the dreaded munkjack. And the munkjack is an introduced one, introduced from Asia, just over 100 years ago now, well over 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And yeah, I was reading, it's in the 80s, I was reading an article by, in the Norfolk Naturalists Society, the Norfolk Norwich Naturalist Society, and in something like 1982 there was great excitement. They'd arranged a trip because someone had seen a munkjack in Thetford, and everyone went, and now you can't, you know, it's not that long ago, 40 years is it, now you can't go anywhere without seeing them. And those are our native deer. They have breeding seasons, but you know, the munkjack just goes on all year round, and I mean, you're going to hand it, it has like a prehistoric digestive system. It can eat things that are poisonous to the native deer, and it has a particular penchant for rare orchids, and that's like a group of those tway blades. I know the flower isn't much, but they were all eaten off by munkjack. And the deer, they do love a regenerating coppice, nice juicy coppice block. So when we finish a coppice block, we finish for the season, we do have to fence it off. We use solar powered deer fencing to protect our blocks. And yeah, that's it. It's 9 kilovolts when it's going through. Okay, so we finished our coppicing in spring, and the wood moves into summer, and the rides start filling up with all sorts of interesting plants. This is Centauri. It's a great little plant. It's a member of the gentian family. Seems to flower for months. Glorious little plant. And the butterflies come out as well. It's a large white, nectaring on knapweed, speckled wood. They like the shade. We have ringlet there on the grasses. Oh, we've already had a peacock. Here's another one, and that's nectaring on this hempagrimony. It's quite well named. It's not related to hemp or agrimony, but it makes lots of nectar, so the insects love it. There's comma there, basking on a hazel leaf. Common blue on a bird's foot trefoil there. That's the common blue male. The common blue female is brown. But they both have this beautiful underside to their wings. We have lots of skippers, and we have the red admiral, and we also have the white admiral. The white admiral is well named. It's mostly black. And again, it has this glory, absolutely get it in the right light, the underwing is just fabulous. And the white admiral used to be our prize butterfly. It's a big butterfly. If you ever see so when these gliding butterflies coming down the rides, glorious sight to behold. It lays its eggs on honeysuckle. We have lots of honeysuckle, wild honeysuckle in the wood. And the caterpillars live on the wild honeysuckle. And we used to think, oh, yeah, we've got white admiral in the wood. This was our prize specimen, our prize butterfly. And then in 2018, after a 30-year absence, the silver-washed fritillary came back to the wood. And again, another massive butterfly, a gliding butterfly. And, I'd like to think it was our coppice management, 30 years of coppicing, we brought the wood back, and it was now ideal for the silver-washed fritillary. It might just be climate change, I don't know. But now the white admiral was into second place. This was our prize butterfly, the silver-washed fritillary. And you can see it regularly now, and the population has grown. And we now get the Valencina version, which apparently you only get if you have a lot of them, this colour morph, the Valencina silverwash. Oh, that was it. We've got the silverwash fritillary, fabulous. And then during lockdown 2022, the Purple Emperor showed up. And these photos are terrible, I do apologise, because the Purple Emperor loiters at the top of high oaks, and it feeds on, or the caterpillars feed on goat willow. There's a lot of goat willow in Ashwellthorpe, so it likes to have an oak near the goat willow. And it came back in 2022, and unfortunately the real evidence for it was someone found a wing, obviously been pecked, but nipped by a bird, eaten by a bird. But yeah, we have the Purple Emperor now. So White Admiral now relegated to 3rd place, but we have, I think it's 25 species of butterfly in the wood now, so that's quite good. So in the summer it's a great place to go for, if you like butterflies, for a butterfly safari. If you like insects, there's all sorts of other insects, beetles, and just so many different things, bees and so on. Moths as well, we have a lot of day flying moths. Here's just a few of them, but we also night flying moths. We did do a moth trapping once, and we got 200 species. Yeah, so we're trying to add to that list. They all have fabulous names. Those old taxonomists must have had a great time calling them like the dingy footman and all the other ones that. And insects, dragonflies, of course. Southern hawker there, common darter and ruddy darter, and as well as the lovely attractive insects, the butterflies, the dragonflies, we have the hideous stinging ones, the deer flies and the horse flies. And they don't just sting, they actually take a piece of flesh out of you. You certainly know when you've been bitten by one of those. On the rides, we have a lot of grass snakes in the wood because of it being so wet. They like to bask on log heaps on the side of the ride. This one was posing really nicely, and it shot off when I got my camera out. This was on another day. I was walking along the ride. I thought, oh, someone's chucked a bicycle inner tube on the path. See, when I got closer, I realised it was a grass snake, and it was a grass snake that had just eaten something huge, because you could see it and it was digesting, and it wasn't going to get out of the way. It was too busy digesting, so I managed to get a few photos of that. Yeah, it was too full to move away. Yeah, and we have a lot of mosquitoes. So it's quite good that we also have a lot of bat species in the wood. 9 species of bat use the wood. We did put up some boxes. Only the blue tits and the pipistrelles use the boxes. So and we found that we had what is considered the rarest bat in the UK in the wood, and that was the barbastelle. So we did do, I'm trying to think when this was, maybe 2018, we did do a barbastelle tracking project with Jane Harris here from the Barbastelle Study Group, because originally there was only one colony of barbastelles known in Norfolk, and they were in a barn in Paston, and there was very little known about the ecology of the barbastelle in the UK. There's been some studies done in a woodland in Oxford, and these Norfolk ones weren't behaving anything like the woodland ones in Oxford. And there was worry as well that the Paston colony had become very isolated and inbred, and that they would die out. So there was a big move to try and find other colonies of barbastelles, and we found one in Ashwellthorpe, and so we found out where they were roosting, what trees they liked to roost in, old oaks with the bark peeling off. And, well, and I say we, Jane, trapped, we were watching, so you need a license to handle them, so only Jane did. We put up these mist nets and caught a couple of barbastel, female bats, and Jane put on a little tracker on their backs, a radio tracker, so we could follow them and find out what they needed, where they went in the night. And basically you have about, once you put the tracker on, it's a tiny thing, once the tracker is on the back of the bat, you've got 2 weeks to find out as much information as you can before the battery runs out on the tracker or it falls off, because eventually it'll just fall off the bat. So we set about this. We had these funny sort of radio, television antennae thing. We had to find where they were in the day, in the daylight, find the roost tree, and then in the night, follow them in the dark, so emitting this noise. How none of us got arrested, I have no idea, but they were very set in their ways. The 2 bats came out and they foraged in the wood up and down for about an hour, and then they set out, left the wood, and it was always via the same route. One went west and it shot up. We followed it for a while, and then it disappeared into a stud farm, a very exclusive horse stud farm, and we couldn't get hold of the owners to ask permission to go in and follow the bat, find out what it was doing. So just got as far, but the other bat left east, and it went to the King's Head, the White Horse in Ashwellthorpe, then to the Bird in Hand in Renningham, then the King's Head in Ashwellthorpe, and it finished up along a disused railway line which had really high hedges, and the moths were to die for, and it just spent hours just going back and forth eating moths before returning to the wood. Yeah, so it was after 2 weeks, you know, completely exhausted, running around the countryside with this aerial. But we did find out quite a lot about the behaviour of the bats, and also about the trees that they liked. And yeah, so it was quite good. So now, after our bat tracking, we've come round to autumn again, and it's time to start the coppicing. And autumn is a great time to, of course, to see fungi in the in the non-intervention zones. All manner of fungi, some easily recognisable. The fly agaric, which likes to grow on the roots of birch, quite a lot of birch in the wood, and of course, you know, made famous by Alice in Wonderland. But also the Vikings. The Vikings loved a little bit of fly agaric. Because it has hallucinogens in it, and there was a tribe of Vikings called the Berserkers, who used to like nothing better than to nibble on a bit of fly agaric to whip themselves into a frenzy before going into battle. So here's the fly agaric. Then the stinkhorn, common stinkhorn, which auto-digests here, emits this awful rotting smell to attract flies, which disperse its spores, and they emerge out of the ground like an egg-like structure. So they used to be called witches' eggs. And then there's the lovely shaggy ink cap, emerges out of the ground very, very quickly. Nice tasty fungus. But then very rapidly starts digesting itself to produce this black ink. And another name for the shaggy ink cap was the lawyer's wig, because they did actually collect this ink and use it for signing legal documents. So you could look in under the microscope and see the spores of the shaggy ink cap, and different law firms would have different inks, so they could check that the documents hadn't been forged. There you go. Lots of wood rotting fungus, it's Ganodermas. Amazing things these. They can digest wood. you know, how do they do it? I don't know. As well as the sort of tasty fungi like the shaggy ink caps and the nice useful ones. You've got to be a little bit careful because we also have the deadly poisonous, like the death caps, or clues in the name really. Just a quarter of a cap is enough to kill you. The toxin isn't reduced by cooking or drying or freezing or anything like that. No antidote. It's the old death cap. Lots of amphibians in the wood, frogs, also toads, just outside the wood. Oh, we've just started Toad Watch. They got off to a start. I think they're frozen again now, but there's a big crossing of the toads spend the winter in the wood, and then they cross to their breeding pond. Unfortunately, they have to cross the main road through Ashwellthorpe, so quite a lot of them get squashed. And there's lots of frogs there as well. And the frogs, you know, they're quite good food for the owl population in the wood. We have barn owls, tawnies, little owls, and long-eared owls. And you know, the poor old barn owl, sort of running out of habitat, so we do try and help the owls as we can. We did put up some barn owl boxes for them. They didn't use them, but the tawnies quite like them. There's a tawny owl peeping out there. And underneath the owl box is great because you can get all the pellets, the owl pellets, and they pellet up. And from that you can find out what they've been feeding on. You can get all that. It was all out of one pellet, little shrews and voles. Okay, yeah, so it's October, it's time to start the coppicing blocks, coppicing again. So we have 12 blocks, we're on a 12-year rotation. And here's a typical scene. We always have a fire to burn, what we call the lop and top, the branches. Also sort of keep spirits high when it's freezing cold and wet. The trees, a little bit about the trees in the wood. We coppice alder. This is plateau alder. It's one of the SSSI notifications. Very unusual to have alder in a woodland. You normally see it as a car around the Broads, but it's because the wood is so wet, can support alder. Fortunately, it does coppice very well. And alder is one of only 2 of our native trees that can make its own nitrogen fertilizer using bacteria from soil. If any gardeners in the audience, you know that peas and beans can do that using rhizobia bacteria in the soil. The trees use a slightly different bacteria, it's Frankia, but they make these same root nodules that take nitrogen from the air and provide the trees with fertilizer. All round interesting tree, the old alder. When you cut it, it's white, but it rapidly goes this beautiful orangey red colour in contact with the oxygen. Something reacts, phenolics maybe, sugars, to produce this lovely orange colour, and has some quite unusual properties, the alder wood. It's resistant kind of water, so it doesn't rot very easily, and it is quite soft. It's a soft wood that you can carve, dig out, and it's thought that an old alder falling into a river gave a Stone Age man the first idea for like a dugout canoe, or man, maybe not Stone Age, man, first idea for a dugout canoe. There's a huge amount of hazel in the wood. The hazel, all the coppiced hazel has all manner of useful, can be put to all manner of useful purposes. It's strong yet flexible, so for fence making and anything that needed to be bent into shape. Also makes an excellent firewood. And the forked hazels, branches, was in medieval times it was used for water divining. It's like they had magical powers. Here's another tree we have in the wood, hornbeam. It's beautiful grey bark. It smells fantastic when you cut it down. And the hornbeam, it is in Ashwellthorpe is probably, or in Norfolk, is probably at its northernmost natural habitat. It's generally considered to be a tree of the Mediterranean, but yeah, it is a native tree, Ashwellthorpe, and it's also plays host to our rarest orchid in the wood, and that's the bird's nest orchid. This isn't dead, that's it, in full flower. It's as good as it gets. It's a very lazy orchid, done away with its chlorophyll, so it's not green, it doesn't bother to make its own, doesn't bother with photosynthesis. It steals food from the tree and the mycorrhiza in the ground. Doesn't flower every year, doesn't bother to flower. When it does deign to flower, we have to keep the location quite secret because it is very, very rare. I think the most number of spikes we've had at any one year is 7. Yeah. Then we have the goat willow or sallow. It's the food plant for our purple emperor. And this is nothing wrong with this bark here. This is deer damage. The deer love to peel the bark from the goat willow, maybe after the salicylic acid, the aspirin. Perhaps they have a lot of headaches, I don't know. It's the goat willow. And, of course, the wood was named for the ash. This photo was taken quite some time ago, a healthy ash coppice. I'm very happy if we could see something like this today, because unfortunately in 2012, ash dieback arrived in Ashwellthorpe, and the first inkling that there was something wrong was the regenerating coppice. Instead of, you see this healthy regenerating coppice here, and then this one, which was kind of dying in the middle. That was the first indication that there was something wrong. And then slightly older trees were getting these scars, which were being caused by fungus, Hymenoscyphus fraxineus, ash dieback fungus, and the fruiting body of the fungus. This is, you can't see the fungus in here, but the fruiting body, these tiny mushrooms that grow on the leaf stalks that fall from the tree in the autumn, and they develop over winter. It's these tiny, and it's just incredible that, you know, something like this can kill a tree. Just remarkable. But in 2012, although the coppice was showing there was something wrong, the older, what we call the standard ashes, you couldn't there was nothing wrong, you couldn't see anything wrong with them, but by 2 years later we were seeing this sort of thing. Trees were dying quite rapidly. The odd thing was that dead ones were standing next to trees that were looking perfectly healthy, ash trees that were looking perfectly healthy. So there was always some hope that we wouldn't lose them all. We're now, what is it, 13 years on, 12, 13 years on, we probably lost 90% of our ash trees, but there are some still that look perfectly fine. That's our hope, that they will repopulate in time. Maybe not in my lifetime, but someone's lifetime they might repopulate. And what we do find is there are a lot of young ash seedlings coming up, and hope is that some of them will be, if they survive the munching of the deer, that they'll grow to be big trees again. That's a sad story of the ash dieback. And you know that it's a fungus that's come in from Asia, probably the far east of Russia, and it's come in on Asian ash trees, and the Asian ash tree is completely resistant to the ash dieback fungus, but it's come into Europe and couldn't find its normal host. The fungus couldn't find an Asian ash to grow on, so it's gone to the closest thing, which is the European ash. There's devastating effects. And before the arrival of the ash dieback fungus, we had our own native form of that fungus. It's called Hymoscyphus albidus, and that fungus is very closely related to its Asian cousin, but it lived quite peaceably with the European ash, and in the winter it digests up the leaves that fall. It was quite happy just to sit on the leaves and digest up the leaves, and it played a really important role in recycling. You know, otherwise we'd all be up to our necks in dead leaves. It recycled the leaves of the ash tree. And the often overlooked first victim of the whole ash dieback crisis was that fungus, because we don't find that anymore now. It's been pushed out by its thuggish Asian cousin. There we are. So I guess one species I haven't said too much about yet is the coppicing volunteer. We use hand tools, quite a lot of bow saws, loppers. We use the occasional fearsome bill hook. We are slightly mechanicized. Chainsaw, oh, that's me. It's not all hard work. We do drink a lot of tea, an awful lot of tea. We occasionally get joined by sort of bigger groups. This was a group from work, from John Innes. They left the lab to come out for the day to help the coppicing. The Boy Scouts often come out to help various badges. One time we were joined by a medieval reenactment group. That was quite interesting. They brought their homemade tools with them, but it didn't last long. They soon picked up ours. I think it was very... we generate a lot of wood, cut wood, and we do try to use it as much as we can. We do some hurdle fence making. We provide bean sticks, the local allotments. The hazel sticks also make excellent scarecrows. We do good line in washing line props. There's always plenty of firewood to go around. We provide the Morris men, the Morris Kemp's men of Norwich, with their dancing sticks. One of our volunteers does a bit of wood turning. He also makes these rustic Christmas trees. And talking of which, we're now into the winter months. And we carry on coppicing regardless of the weather, but it's a great time to look at the tree skeletons and see the lovely galls. This is a hornbeam gall caused by a little insect. So there's a bit of mistletoe there. Oh, we have all sorts of other galls. There's a cherry, a bit like the gall that Dennis just brought in today. The honeysuckle creates these lovely, we call them the twizzle sticks, these beautiful natural carvings. There's an oak here with various galls on it. It's a lovely time to look at all the mosses in the wood and the lichens. This was a group of moss experts, the mosses, I don't know. They came in to do a moss survey, but they really didn't get very far from the entrance, and they'd already, they spent hours just looking at the first, and they found 40 species in just a little bit of area there. Yeah, we carry on coppicing. One year we had to bring the tools in on a sledge, but that's a lovely time to see the footprints, the deer and other creatures. There's a little shrew caught in the snow there. We do a sausage sizzle to keep the spirits up in the winter months, and at Christmas we do have a special bonfire. When was it? Some while ago, maybe 10 years or more ago, the volunteers were asked to take part in a government survey, and they asked why did they come out on the cold winter Sunday to working the wood. So I'm going to leave the last words to the volunteers. I hope this is going to work. So I have to say that we are always looking for new volunteers, and anyone who comes along, guaranteed a very warm welcome. That's it, that's the end. Except I forgot one thing in some unashamed advertising. If anyone would like to learn more about the wood, we have this little book here at the bargain price of £5. There you go.
Are you happy to take questions?
I am happy to take questions, yes.
Have we got any questions from you?
The Asian fungus,
Yes.
does that break down the leaves as well, or are you finding the leaves taking a lot longer to break?
Oh, that's a good question. No, it does. It likes to munch through. The trouble is, that it's not happy with just the leaves. It likes to munch the wood as well, and that's the problem. Yeah, it's very aggressive.
Do you suppose that at some stage there will be a resurgence of the European ash having overcome or adapted to the...
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And something else as well is that without wanting to, what's the word, anthropomorphise? What's the word? The fungus nose is in the wrong place. And it doesn't want to kill all the trees, because if it does, it won't have anything to live on either. So what we find is that the fungus is actually evolving to become less aggressive. So in time, whereas the trees that are, well, some trees that are naturally resistant, they seem to be naturally resistant. So, and with as they propagate and the fungus becomes less aggressive, will reach a balance. Yeah.
Time frame?
Sorry?
Is there a time frame to...
Is there a time frame?
Taken?
Oh, that's a good... I think as we learn more, there perhaps could be, but it's still too early to say exactly when.
And worth planting the Asian ash then?
Oh, now there's a question. Oh,
Controversial, clearly.
yeah, controversial. I still hold out for the return of the native, I'd say. Yeah.
Might distract them.
Might distract. Yeah. Yes, that's true. Like, yeah. Give them a. I don't know how well the Asian ash would do in this climate. I mean, you do. Yeah, maybe in the south of the country it might, but I don't know. Yeah.
Couldn't there be some sort of cross-pollination between the two to develop a third
I think that has been tried. It wouldn't be a natural process. You'd have to. That sort of thing has been. So there was a terrible disaster in the. Well, there have been lots of terrible disasters in the States, haven't there? But one in the 1800s was that when they lost the American chestnut through a fungus that had come in from Japan, I think it was, or somewhere, and they lost all these beautiful chestnut forests. And there again, they found that the Japanese chestnut was completely resistant, so they crossed the Japanese chestnut with the American chestnut to try and save the species, but what they got back wasn't really the American chestnut. It was resistant, but they didn't, it wasn't the same thing. They wanted the same thing back. And what they did there was they found out how the fungus was killing the tree, and it was producing, I think it was oxalic acid, like you get in rhubarb. It was producing an acid that was killing the American chestnut. So they actually took an enzyme, a gene from wheat plants that could digest this acid, this oxalic acid, and they put it into the American chestnut, and they got an American chestnut that was resistant to the fungus, and it was an American chestnut. It wasn't an Asian chestnut, but yeah, you can do the crossing, but you don't get the same tree. That's the thing, and a lot of species rely on the ash tree, and a lot of lichens and things are only found on the European ash, because it has a particular pH of its bark. And so if you make it a cross, it depends what you're doing it for. If you're doing it to recreate the same ecology, then probably it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be and it's always a shame to lose a species. So I say don't cross them. We'll hold out for natural resistance. But it also was a huge wake-up call for plant biosecurity, because that should never have happened. It shouldn't. If you had a proper, there was always animals. There were always regulations for moving animals but there was never really for plants. And if any good was came from the whole ash dieback thing, was that's been tightened up now. Yeah.
How does a plant heat itself up?
Oh, yes, that's another excellent question, because it heats it up something like 10 degrees above the outside temperature, I think it is, and it does it at a particular time every afternoon. I can't remember, like from 2 to 4 p.m. when the supplies were, and the temperature never wavers. It holds it steady, and at one point, so it's like this fabulous natural thermostat. And at one point, I think it was Tesco's wanted to invest in what exactly. How does it do it? Because they suffer from when people open the freezer door, the temperature fluctuates widely, and they said, well, this plant can hold the temperature exactly. Why can't we? So there was a lot of work done on that, and that was through some enzymes that were pretty much unique to the arum lily, so that it could mobilize that unusual starch. It's not to create energy very rapidly and just hold it steady. Yeah.
It's basically burning sugars.
Yeah, burning its carbohydrates up, maintaining a temperature. Yeah, very clever plants. They're very clever.
Have we got any more questions?
Isn't there a controversial idea that the sycamore can sort of be a partial substitute for the ash tree, and some of this
Yes. Yes. Again, a very good point there. So we always used to try and eliminate all the sycamore. But now we're being a little bit more tolerant to obviously you don't want it can take over, you know how fast they grow. And they seed everywhere, they germinate really rapidly. So we're not going to give them too much leeway, but the odd sycamore here and there just to see how it goes. We're no longer quite so anti-sycamore as we used to be. So.
Are they not native?
No, they're from North America.
I thought you northern France, aren't they?
Oh, are they from Northern France? Oh, even worse. Oh, I'm sorry, no, this has been recorded. No, they're not native to the UK. Did they come from Northern France via North America or something? I don't know. Yeah.
On your the cuttings and all the stuff you're burning, now there are no requirements for broom handles, etc. What actually, how much of your coppice, what do you do with it?
Yeah, good. So we try not to burn. We try not to burn too much. We do supply, like we've had hedge layers. They really struggle to get coppice products, so we get a lot of orders from hedge layers. But we have more than we ever. So we do also. More recently, we've been chipping it. We have to take it off site. We can't because it will add nutrient to the thing. So we take it off site, and a lot of it gets chipped or firewood for people's homes.
You could bundle it up in 20s and sell it for just...
A score! Yes. I could bring back the nuttery faggot, couldn't I? That's a vegan delicacy. 2 shillings and 6pence a score. Yeah.
I wondered whether there was a market for it as part of the new power station at Snetterton. Do they burn biofuel?
So yes. There are a few. It would be great if you. The problem is that they would probably need a continuous supply, which we couldn't. I mean, it's very seasonal. We would be perhaps too small to bother, and because of the. You can't get to most of the blocks. You can't get a vehicle to because you would damage the woodland floor beyond things. So it's getting it out is quite difficult.
Horses.
Well, yes, horses. Plus there was something else I was going to say. Yeah.
But the Port Authority have a vehicle that can do that.
Sorry.
The Port Authority have a vehicle that can do that.
Yeah. Whether they would bother coming out for the small amount that I don't know, but heavy horses would be great. And there's a lot of mole activity at the moment in the wood, huge mole hills, and one of them threw up the biggest horseshoe I've ever seen, a real old one. So at one point they probably were using heavy horses, and that would be the ideal. But yeah.
But you've got to feed the horse in there all year round.
Yeah, it can. Yes, it can go. Yeah. It would be great because it was a saying, isn't it? A wood that pays stays or something. But we try to use as much as we can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, that was. I should remind you of our next event, the AGM on the 1st of April. There's some posters there.
I'll just put that across there.
We will be having
Blinding.
teas and coffees and biscuits available back on that door. I don't know. We've got them in the kitchen. So that was a really wonderful talk. And the pictures were splendid. I really want to go to Ashwellthorpe again. So, a big round of applause.
Thank you.